You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't.
Hello, everyone. Michael Renfro here. I'm the host of 15 Minutes. Share Your Voice, where we talk with top-notch lawyers as well as law firms about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, where we deliver tailor-made services to help you accomplish those objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure that you are getting the best ROI that your firm is able to get, you do need to have a better website and better content than the competition. At Gladiator Law Marketing, we use artificial intelligence combined with machine learning and literally over a century of experience to outperform the competition in that regard. To learn more, please go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com. That should be at the bottom of the screen. And for those of you who are just listening, excuse me, that is gladiatorlawmarketing.com. Or you may reach out to me directly at the following email, michael@gladiatorlawmarketing.com, and that's simply Michael. Anyway, let's get right into it. So today's guest is Brian Ross with Ross Legal, and I already heard a few interesting things about Ross right here in the beginning, but Ross, right out of the gate, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your practice and what your practice areas are?
Michael, thank you. It's great to be here with you. I am Brian Ross with Ross Legal. We're a boutique law firm based in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. A little bit about myself. I'm a 25-year attorney. I spent about half of my career in big law and in the law firm setting, and the other half of my career I was spent as an in-house general counsel, running legal teams for emerging companies, two of which ended up getting acquired by Fortune 100 companies. So it's been an interesting ride, and it's great to be here with you today.
No, that's really awesome. So let's kind of get right into it. How did you get started in such a, obviously, I'm assuming where you got started is far from where you ended up, like so many of us.
Yeah, humble beginnings, here in the San Fernando Valley. I've been working since I was 14. I've always enjoyed it. Christmas tree lots, movie theaters, restaurants, retail stores. I went to UCLA as an undergrad, and then I went to UCLA Law School. And I wanted a career that would let me, open some interesting doors, challenge me academically, and law felt like the perfect fit. So I jumped right in, and I spent some time right out the gate at a plaintiff's law firm. And I was in court every day. I was arguing motions. I was doing all the stuff that young lawyers, want to do rather than being stuck in a basement writing research memoranda. It was a lot of fun. And then I went to big law firms in Los Angeles. One was called Baker and Hostetler, which is a national firm based in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And then I spent the balance of that time at Mitchell Silberberg and Knupp. And the early days of my career were just dynamic. I switched from, plaintiff's work to, working for big established companies and clients. And I was working with entertainment companies, technology companies. This was during the first internet bubble when things were really exploding, and we were all figuring out together what it meant to be an internet company and what it meant to put together a contract for things like internet marketing and search and what have you, right? So it was all coming together at this time, super exciting. And also a lot of new media companies that were distributing content online. So that was a fun training time for me. I worked on some interesting cases like all the Napster litigation. I was one of the lawyers who helped bring down Napster, for better or worse, depending on how you feel about that kind of thing. Making the world safe for, iTunes and Spotify, I guess. And then there were a bunch of progeny that followed Napster, like Grokster and other ones. And we dealt with all those guys. A lot of anti-piracy work, a lot of, anti-counterfeiting, a lot of trademark work, a lot of copyright work.
A lot of protection.
That was a lot of what I did. Yes.
Protection too. I mean, the one thing that I try to tell people, they really don't realize it. The average person, you talk to them. And what's funny is when I say the average person, I'm talking about sometimes, a partner or a girlfriend or a wife, husband, whatever, of someone who is an extreme techie, right? And they have no idea the amount of what happens on the true internet. And I say that because there is the dark web and what goes on there, and then there's what everybody else sees on the outside. But it's vastly different, and one is completely unsecured, and it really bothers me. I hope one day we figure out a way to me, it's no different than any other playground. I'll put it that way. you don't want to have a playground where people can get hurt and people can take advantage of someone. And essentially, this is a playground for businesses as well as communities and recreation and everything under the sun. So I agree with you personally. I think there has to be some form of, simply put, just regulation to make sure that people aren't being taken advantage of or hurt.
Yeah, well, that's been a constant theme, through my practice with these companies, which is, the internet is not the wild, wild west.
It shouldn't be. When you got into it, sir, it was the wild, wild west.
It sort of was. It sort of was.
I described it that way for years. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, we were trying to figure out, at the beginning, what do you do with children on the internet?
Right.
How do you handle their data? And of course, laws came out to try to protect that. What do you do in terms of privacy? What do you do in terms of security? Privacy and security are related, but they're two different sides of the same coin. And how do you handle those? And of course, now we have Europe has their own legal scheme for privacy, and we're trying to cope with that here as a bunch of American companies. And I've got clients all over the globe who have to deal with that. And there's also California, which is leading the way in terms of privacy. So regulations come, they're slow. The way the sausage is made behind the scenes is very messy. There was also a lot of kerfuffle at the start about how do we handle copyrighted content and infringement, and do we allow services like YouTube to grow into multi-billion-dollar companies on the backs of other people's content that they're getting and using for free without permission? And all those questions had to be sorted out in real time. It's sort of like doing heart surgery on a patient who's running around a track and they won't lay down. You have to keep moving, and you have to, adjust as you go. So that's what we did. And then when I switched hats and I became the in-house lawyer, we had to come at it from the other side, more of the business side. So it's really been a fascinating journey. And I've been proud that I could help, create new precedents in copyright and trademark law.
Part of history.
Huh?
I mean, you're part of history. I mean, you can't, give yourself a kudos, but you are part of history. What you're doing is part of where the internet is going, where it has, come from. You've been a part of that. I mean, truly kudos, because I think that a lot of people, when we are living, right, while we're living, we don't realize what impact or just how impactful what we're doing is many times. And I can see it because I know the internet is huge. So just giving you those kudos.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's real interesting that some of the people I've gotten to meet because of my legal career so far, there was a gentleman, Dr. Leonard Kleinrock, and he's a professor, a computer science professor at UCLA. And the interesting thing about Dr. Kleinrock, because I worked with him on the Napster case, he was an expert witness. He transmitted the first message across the internet in 1969. There was a big server, a battle-hardened server at UCLA. There was a identical one up at, I think, Stanford. And they linked the two of them through the phone lines, and they figured out, how they were going to send messages through this TCP/IP protocol. Anyway, they started typing the word log on, and they got as far as, I think, LO, and then the system crashed. So he was there for the very first internet transmission. He's one of the fathers
and the very first internet crash.
Right. So imagine being able to tell your grandchildren that you met, and worked with Thomas Edison, or Henry Ford, or
that's
Dr.
exactly
Kleinrock.
what I mean, man. Yeah, you've had some real, not just being on the fringe, but also being part of it. There's on some parts fringe, but then clearly you've been on some. The Napster case was huge. We all remember it. I won't forget it. I used to sit on Napster up until Napster was gone, or Napster changed, I should say.
Yeah, it sure was. I also worked on a case.
It was a different day. Go ahead.
No, I also worked on a case involving the estate of George Harrison, from the Beatles.
Yes.
I was on the other side of that case, but as a result of that, for some months in my office as a young associate, I had a cardboard box that I had to keep, secure. And that cardboard box was filled with original memorabilia from George Harrison's house in Los Angeles, which collapsed during a mudslide. And I had a ticket from the Shea Stadium concert of the Beatles, 1964, encased in a lucite block that George used to keep on his desk in his home office at home while he was doing whatever he was doing. And of course, all this stuff went back to the George Harrison estate eventually as part of the case. But for a little while, I had access to this stuff as a Beatles fan, and photos that no one's ever seen, no one ever will see. And of course, I'm pledged to secrecy about all that stuff. But just being around that was just a fun experience.
That's incredible. awesome.
There's just little things like that that you do as a lawyer that make it fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a little, I don't believe in envy, but definitely would have loved to seen some of those pictures as a Beatles fan myself. My whole family and even my kids now who are 22 are Beatles fans. That's pretty awesome.
Sure.
So real quick, where did the idea of becoming a lawyer come from? Where did that originate?
I wish I could say it was a result of careful planning and plotting, but really it just sort of grew out of the fact that I always enjoyed reading and writing and arguing and talking and persuading. And it just felt like a natural fit. Obviously watched all the TV shows, but actually I was involved in a lawsuit when I was a young child. It was a medical, I was about 12. It was a medical malpractice.
That's pretty young to be involved in an actual case. You were in court type thing, right?
Yeah, there was a doctor who did something and he kind of botched my surgery. And so we had to deal with that in court. And I remember as a 12-year-old actually having my deposition taken. And my mother was sitting there next to me and she said I was really precocious about the whole thing and kind of running the lawyer in circles. And I thought, all right, this is this is sort of fun. So yeah, that's how I got in, I guess.
No, that I think that so obviously I've done this interview and I've also talked to many attorneys. I've been working with only attorneys since 2007 myself in regards to marketing. And it's funny because that's why I said it. I don't think I've ever heard one story that has where an attorney is more than 15 years into it, where they started from, and B, their stories where how they got into it and what got them started is many times, I don't want to say the same, but they're either one or the other. And what I mean by that is they either naturally progress to it because they just, they learned that they were a natural attorney in the sense of investigating and debating and being able to, possibly even be a litigator, right? A classic great litigator. And then the other one, like the other half the time, it's usually because someone told them they should go into it and kind of guided them to it. So it's like they either found it themselves or someone was like, and not one person, by the way, the story is many times multiple people told me I should be an attorney or told me that I am very good at this or very good at that. So if they didn't see it themselves, then they were kind of shown that by other people, if that makes sense.
It does. And I'll tell you that the thing about what makes a natural attorney is a little different than what I thought it was going to be coming in. I thought it was going to mean someone like me who's good at, like I said, reading and writing and discussing things. Actually, turns out that I think the natural lawyers are the people who have more of a mathematical mind, almost the people who've majored in math or even philosophy, because when you're learning law, a lot of it works like a flow chart. It's like, if this happens, then go here. But if that happens, then go down here instead. And then that branches off into other options. So people who are used to thinking that way, in that logical sort of flow, they tend to take to it like a fish in water. Me, I had to learn a new way of thinking, and I did, but that's what law school taught me.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that. So I'm going to kind of double up on a question because it makes the most sense. But what milestone gave you the most traction?
Gosh, I don't know if there's a particular legal victory or that sort of thing. When I think of milestones, I guess I think of, career transitions and really,
right? Things that kind of transformations, right? Kind of changed the way that you think or the way that the firm thinks.
Yeah. And seeing a door open in front of you and being able to recognize that the door is opening and that it's a door that you should jump through. And so for me, it was at the end of my 8th year as an associate. And that's right around the time when people are really thinking whether they want to become a partner in the law firm or whether they want to, do something else. And I put a lot of hard thought into it. And when I had the opportunity to jump in and go in-house, I took it. And I was working at a solar energy, a photovoltaics company. And I was, running legal and wearing a lot of other hats too. And I came to realize I loved that startup challenge where you're taking a growing company and you're putting it together and you're helping, foster that growth and keeping the company clean and always balancing risk versus,
risk management, always being at
legal safety. Right. I mean, lawyers as a breed are very risk averse. We're very, conservative minded because our job is teaching people how to avoid problems a lot of the time. But entrepreneurs learn how to take calculated risks. They're risk takers and pushers.
You have to take a certain amount of risk to be an entrepreneur. That's just the simple ends. I talked to an entrepreneur lawyer just yesterday, funny enough. So please continue, but I think that's so funny.
It's true. I mean, you have to learn. When I'm advising my clients today, as a result of all my past experiences, having been the law firm lawyer who works for the client, but also having been the client,
Right.
sitting at the table, around the table with all the other executives, and sometimes hiring outside law firms to help me with the work that I need to get done.
I was going to say, I would imagine you've gotten help from other attorneys along the way. Absolutely.
All the time. And so sometimes I'm the client and I'm reviewing the legal bills that are coming in onto my desk, and I'm trying to figure out, why was this money spent? So I always approach everything with a business goal in mind. And I think that's been a part of the reason that I've gotten such traction working with so many emerging companies in my latest iteration as a lawyer, is because I do understand a lot of the challenges that you face when you're trying to run a company. And legal is not the only thing on your plate. You're not trying to run a law firm. You're trying to run a internet company or a cannabis company, or whatever it might be.
You're just trying to do it in the confines of the law and make sure that you're not doing, how you say, anything incorrectly or anything that may leave you, exposed. You know, to me, many times the law factor is kind of almost the same as getting good insurance, if you will, right? It's a protection, because anybody starting a company, I've started a company, I'm an entrepreneur, so I speak all this from experience, and I'm only agreeing with you. I hope you see that. But like, no matter what company you start, no matter what product, service you've come up with, you never understand all the ins and outs of it. You don't, and you're not expected to either. That's why you get a lawyer for that and an accountant for this, and you get those experts who understand those particular parts of it. Your piece really should be the service or the product itself, and then you let the experts, I mean, it sucks for all of us, right? We have to give money away, but the reality is that's good money spent, and there's always money that needs to be spent. Nobody likes to give money away to anybody. They always think they can do it themselves. I'm just telling you, it's not the way to do it. I've been there and tried to do it myself. There's a certain amount you can do yourself, but then there's a certain time when you really do need to bring the experts in, and you guys are experts.
It's true. I try to empower my clients to do as much as they can on their own. And I also tell them, measure twice, cut once. That's sort of my motto, because a lot of stuff is more costly to undo after the fact,
right,
than if you just did it right the first time. And having been in-house for so many years and having worked with these companies, I understand, past the legal, where, okay, now we have to get the product team involved, or the tech team, or we got to get, executive sign off, or how do we get finance involved? Can the billing department actually bill in the way that this contract is saying that, the relationship's going to work? Can we support this administratively? Is this going to cause all kinds of disruptions throughout the company and ripple effects beyond legal into business? So that's kind of the perspective I bring to my clients. And
we just funny enough, at Gladiator, we actually have a whole, a whole guide or paper, whatever the word, on client empowerment, in the sense of because part of what we do for the attorneys that we work with, it's very similar in some of the things I've heard you say, and I bet you probably take this next one to heart too, is we try to speak it in their language, because when an attorney comes to us, most of the time they don't understand marketing language. That's a different language to them, just like attorneys talking to one another is a different language, to the non-legal, right? So we always try to present things in a way that is more understanding of a person who is not in marketing, but is an attorney. So many times I use analogies that attorneys will absolutely get, especially since I've used almost every attorney on the planet at this point in my life, except for an elder. But regardless, I digress. It really makes them feel much more comfortable. We also try to explain all the ins and outs with complete transparency, not just because we can say we're transparent, which everybody loves to say, but also because if they understand it. What I have found is if people truly understand on the other side, then they're easier to work with when you come to them with hurdles that are going to happen. Hurdles happen. There's nothing you can do about it, and that actually leads me to my next question. And you're, it says big challenge, but think about it this way. What is the biggest hurdle that you've overcome that, what I always like to hear about is that gave you the most? It wasn't really a hurdle when you look at it. It was a transformation moment or a learning moment that allowed you to really take it to a different place. Does that make sense, that question that I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. And I think when giving that some thought, really the biggest challenge I had to learn to overcome was learning how to effectively delegate and learning how to share responsibility with others so that, we can make it happen. Teamwork is, what is it? Teamwork makes the dream work, or
right,
something like that.
Or there's no I in team. There's that
yeah,
one.
Well,
that's the one I remember. Coach.
Well, the coach said that to me in high school, and I said, "Yeah, but there is ME."
Yeah.
So then he made me run laps after that.
Of course he did.
But when I was in house, I grew a legal team at a particular company, and we had some really excellent attorneys and paraprofessionals and secretaries. But we also had some people who, frankly, probably weren't pulling their weight, right, or may have become more of a liability, personality wise, throughout the company than. Yeah. And so I guess I was loyal to a fault, and I did everything I could to pull those people along and to, kind of protect them. And what I really should have been doing was taking a clearer look at what we're trying to accomplish and whether they really fit. And that was a lesson I had to learn. And it was a difficult one, because no one likes being the bearer of bad news. Hey, I've got to let you go, or this isn't working out,
right,
or you need to find another place in the organization. But sometimes that's necessary. And as a result, it's made me a lot choosier about who I work with. And today, when I associate with, colleagues and expert attorneys and people, where I'm trying to share the load, but get the work done to the level that I'm used to.
That's really funny that you say that, because I interviewed Tricia Meyer yesterday, who I told you she's not only an attorney, but she is an entrepreneur. Obviously, she works in that practice area as well, in the sense of helping businesses, much like yourself. And I just have to tell you, I think you'll find this extremely, I don't believe in coincidence at all. It's not, I believe everything happens the way it's supposed to. It's just my personal belief. And literally her, one thing yesterday that she said was learning when to cut your losses, which you didn't say it in quite the same way, but there's obviously an amount to that, because when we have friends, and I've learned this one myself, those are the harder ones that you're like, you really want to, or even if they're not friends in the beginning, Brian. And what I mean by that is I can't count the number of times where I saw somebody what seemed like they were really trying, but ultimately I did end up having to let them go, and should have done it sooner, but just didn't. I wanted to believe in them, right? And it's sometimes, like you say, it's very difficult to come to the resolution that, hey, I like them. They're good at what they do in many ways, but they are not a good fit for this situation, and I've got to part ways.
Right.
That's not an easy thing to do.
No, we have to learn it no matter what we're doing. Some of us have our own business. Some of us are in the chain of management. Some of us, may not manage or supervise others, but in one way or another, we all have these relationships, and we have to learn how to deal with them.
No, even if you are at the lowest of the totem pole, then there's times where you have to do that with a project, and maybe go to your superior and be like, look, I cannot do this, or I need help, or whatever the case. You just have to understand your limits and understand the limits of those around you, period. What would you say is your, that's your biggest challenge? What's your proudest moment?
There's a few I could look back on, but honestly, one of the proudest moments I had in my career was being part of the acquisition of a company where I was the general counsel. It was called Edgecast. And the company built a global content delivery network, sort of an infrastructure layer on the internet, where we made videos and content move smoothly and quickly, no matter where around the world someone was trying to watch it. And we also layered all these security features onto that. And that company was acquired by Verizon. And it was publicly reported that the acquisition price was around, $400 million. So it was, at the time, I think, the largest acquisition, of a tech company in Los Angeles. And it was a culmination of years of hard work, not necessarily just on that transaction. That involved a lot of hard work, but also just getting the company up to a place where it was desirable, to a company like Verizon, not just because of the technology, but also because there's no skeletons in any closets, and everything is clean and transparent and available. And that was probably one of my proudest moments.
No, I like that. That's very cool. That kind of leads me into this, and you'll get it. But what would you say is your best piece of advice from someone you would call a mentor?
Well, at the very start of my career, when I was a baby lawyer, Mark Jones was really my first boss.
When you were
and
what lawyer? I'm sorry, say that again.
I was a baby lawyer. I was a lawyer in
baby.
training.
I thought you got me, Brian. I thought you gave me some kind of term I hadn't heard yet, but you were giving that's cute. I'm sorry. So when you were a baby lawyer.
Yeah. And Mark, he's no longer with us, but he was an amazing fellow. And the one thing I remember him saying, and maybe this wasn't unique, but he said, when you're in court and the judge is on your side, just shut up and win. Don't talk yourself out of a victory. That was an important piece of advice. And then at a big law firm, I worked for an associate who was actually operating on a partner level. She's amazing. She still is today. Her name is Megan Gray. And Megan taught me, walk faster. I was walking down the hallway going somewhere, and it was always walk faster. And, I took that to heart, meaning just, get on things, jump on them quickly. And then
always be moving forward, right?
Always be moving, yeah. And the CEO at EdgeCast, Alex Kazarani, he taught me to always be knowledgeable, be decisive, and be kind. Always be kind, and have an attitude of being of service to others. They're not there to serve you. You're there to serve them. And if you come at that with that mindset, you'll get it back tenfold.
I really like the last one. I'll say that because, and I know you don't know me, but my story, my personal story, is one of, just like most people's. I tell everybody that everybody's story is incredible. They just need to share it, right? But my only point is that I was a real jerk for many, many years. Even went by the nickname that rhymes with Mick, because I went by Mick and I was Mick the. I'm sure you can fill in the blank there. And I was proud of it, right? And it wasn't until later in life, and that was all before I had my two twin boys at 28. And then I had a real, change of heart. And I think you've already kind of heard some of who I am, but, I live now in the moment. And I believe everything happens the way it's supposed to, because that taught me how valuable kindness is. Because now I go out of my way. I am the servant of my world. And what I mean by that is all I try to do in my world is help everybody and do everything, and not in a people pleasing way either, right? Because people pleasers, I've come to find out, Brian, are usually trying to please themselves by doing good, right? This is more, I took so much from the world early on that it's time to now give back for the remainder of what life I have left. And I only have about maybe half of what I've lived left. So I've got to do it double time. Does that make sense?
It does, but that's part of your evolution as a person, and it's admirable.
Exactly. Well, it just reminds me though of what, some people get it in the beginning, and everybody has their journey, and some people really get it later on after they had to walk the other side. I imagine your friend there at EdgeCast. Am I saying it correctly?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. Alex was Alex one at EdgeCast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
don't have the best memory, but I'm trying.
Well, yeah, there was a trio. There was Alex, James, and Phil, and they're all amazing individuals. But
how old were they when this was happening, if you don't mind me asking?
I want to say probably around 40, early 40s. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're the kind of guys who have done this. They did it with other companies, and they've since done it with another company, and they're just constant entrepreneurs with that motor inside that never turns off. Just amazing guys. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's very cool. That's very cool. So just a few last questions here. A typical day. Why don't you give us like daily rituals and in that, like, really what's the most important ones for you in a typical day of what you consider a successful day?
I have a typical day like everyone else. I also have twin boys and I have a daughter. And so it's a long day. Starts at, usually around 6:30, ends at midnight. I like to start my morning with, coffee, like everybody else, usually iced coffee. I've been into Pilates for about 10 years, which I used to lift weights very heavy, but I switched over to Pilates and it's been great for me. And, the core, I guess, once you have a strong core, you can be a weekend warrior, you can do whatever you want. And it even serves you in your daily life at work, sitting at a desk all day or whatever. I like to organize. Yep. Yeah. I had a standing desk for a long time.
Well, I take it out of the shot. I take it out of the shot, but my Pilates ball sits back there on top of my bike there. But I don't have it in the shot when but I many times will pull the desk down and because just sitting on the ball, what I've learned is active sitting is so much better than just sitting. If you're going to sit, find a way to either be lean sitting, something that's not just the average,
100%. 100%. So just trying to stay healthy, stay organized, keep my personal space organized, keep my work organized. And I like to cook. My wife and I both like to cook. We like to cook dinners, and that's it. Very family oriented, very
nice.
Any
crazy hobbies or strange habits involved with Mr. Ross?
I mean, I have a shelf of half-read books that I keep looking at that are calling back to me, and I want to read them. And I buy books on Amazon, and they sit there, and I haven't opened them yet. And we might all be that way. I don't know.
No, I share.
Like I said, I love to cook.
Unfortunately, I have probably more unfinished books, and I mean, some of them I really got into, and I'm like, why won't you just pick it back up and go? But I have so many other things to do. And I won't say that I'm best at time management, but a book to me is going to be more of a want rather than a need. So, and I have more needs right now than I have wants, if that kind of makes sense.
It does. It does. It does. It's good to not want. It's good to want what you have. And
right. I don't really try to want too much. And when I say need, what I mean by that is there's things I need to accomplish. They're not things I want to accomplish. If that.
Right. Right.
I mean, I do have a few wants.
I guess I'm just a very.
Go ahead.
Huh?
No, I was going to say I do have dreams. I didn't want to say sound like I don't have any wants, but go ahead. Other than that.
Yeah. I guess I'm just a very eclectic music lover is the only other thing. I mean, I have hundreds of different folders on Spotify with all kinds of different collections, and I'm constantly jumping from, the most obscure music you've ever heard to what to fun, soundtracks to everything. So I don't like to be put in a box, I guess, but that's me.
We actually have truly we have a lot in common. I can't begin to tell you. We have things in common, but you wouldn't by chance be a Taurus, would you?
No, I guess I'm a Cancer.
Cancer.
Yeah.
So but I'm the same way in the sense that the difference is I don't have multiple folders. I have one ongoing mix that now has approximately 3,200 songs in it, and I just hit random on that. But it is everything from classical and even some great country to things that you would be like, that sounds really odd. I don't even hear music in that. I mean, I have every genre because I believe that all music is great as long as it's made for soul and not money. That's just my personal thing. Like, you can hear the difference in music that was made purely to get a dollar bill versus music where someone's speaking about, and even foreign music. I don't know if you listen to that, but I listen to a lot of foreign tracks where I truly don't understand what they're saying, but you can just feel that they're saying it with emotion. Like it's in the music.
Oh, you don't.
Their lyrics.
Look, you don't have to go foreign for that. You can just listen to Pearl Jam. I can't understand a word of what that guy is saying.
Right. Unfortunately, I was around when Pearl Jam came out. They were Eddie Vedder was one of my all-time favorites when I was a kid. Craziest thing that you have ever done,
other than going to law school?
Going into law school. Good answer.
Maybe that, or the craziest thing I ever did was moving to England for a year during my college days, just, taking a year abroad. And really the reason for that was just because. So that was maybe the craziest thing I ever did.
Which is really, truly, I don't consider that to be, I mean, I have a little saying that normal is strange anyway, right? Everything, what people consider to be normal is ultimately what is strange. We just have to get to know one another. But to me, that's really not crazy. That's actually, I think it's an urge in a lot of us at that time, that, hey, I want to go and see some of the world and see a little bit more before I end up settling down to what is going to be ultimately a very similar life every day with less, changes, if you will. Right. But going out there and just running the country, man, I never got to do it. It was one of those things I wanted to do. And it's kind of still on my now bucket list, if you will, do it before I die kind of thing. Where are you from and what was it like growing up there?
I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley. And so it was very idyllic, kind of suburban,
Oh, you told me that in the beginning. Never mind. There's my bad memory, and I do apologize. You literally started off with that. But tell me a little bit more about what it was like to grow up there, just a little bit.
It was just, a lot of riding our BMX bikes down the street, hanging outside with my friends, till the street lights came on. We had a little kind of a miniature forest near where we lived, and so we would go in there and make, camp outs and
trails. Do you have trails?
Trails, a lot of, cap guns, banging caps on the front driveway with hammers and just doing silly stuff. And, I just had a great kind of a free range childhood. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
It's funny you did that in California, because it did basically the same thing in South Carolina. I always tell people, though, the only to boot is I found out later that I lived on what was once a plantation ground. So a plantation had sold and they developed it into a neighborhood, right? And we lived on the outskirts, but it was multiple forests, and there was also a few lots that hadn't been finished. And all these places became either hills for jumping with BMX, or trails, or camping, or building forts. I mean, it was, very free range, like you said, and really enjoyed it, because we were about a mile and a half really outside of really even being, back then it was more like the rural area, less than even the suburbs.
Right.
I'm sure you get it. I think you kind of already told me this when you were, so I'm going to skip that one. So I'll just do this. In the industry now, because I know you told me some of your mentors, but in the industry now, and today's, up to date, if you will, in the present day, who would you say is maybe one or two of the colleagues that most impress, or that you have the most respect for? And if there's some of the same already and it hasn't changed, that's fine. I understand your answer, but I try to let you know I'm not really necessarily talking about the guys in the past or folks in the past, women, men, but is there anybody today that really has your eye?
There's no particular legal, shining star or anything like that I focus on. I mean, a lot of people have different accomplishments, but honestly, the person I learned the most from tends to be my partner. And I think I mentioned she's my wife as well, and she's a respected, accomplished, 20 plus year attorney in her own right on a completely different track. She was a partner at a big LA firm, and she left to start her own thing. And when I left the in-house world, I took my practice and plugged it into that infrastructure. And so we work together and we complement each other. And she's very strategic and very forward thinking. And I learn a lot from the way she thinks. There's also my mentors that I mentioned, that
absolutely.
I've been privileged to work with over the years. And I really think you're, as a young lawyer, going to be as strong as, your mentor opportunities. A lot of people want to just hang out their own shingle and start and learn from the ground up themselves. And that's great. But I wanted to learn from others. And there's certain nuances and things that you pick up just by being around, experienced practitioners that you don't get when you're trying to learn it, in the school of hard knocks. So all of my mentors, I respect. And anyone really, I think we talked about this already, but anyone with an entrepreneurial or risk-taking spirit, I enjoy working with. And also, maybe most importantly, because I know we talked about this a lot already, but anyone who you can find a way to work with in a kind and collegial manner, because law, of course, can be adversarial by nature, and it's real easy for someone to fall into, the a-hole mode. But if you can avoid that trap and just learn to be kind, it doesn't mean you're being weak. It just means you're being a human being. And we all have to work the same workday. So let's get through it together with not only competence, but kindness. And those are the people I respect most, believe it or not.
I actually just had this, my wife we were having a discussion, and I mean, it's everything. And you and I think you mentioned it first, but the example that I'm about to give is not a business example at all. To me, kindness goes in all forms of life. I finally took that one phrase. I know if you know this one, or if you don't know this one, I'll be quite surprised, but kill them with kindness. Right. And I try to teach that to my son, because they get particularly my I have twins that are 22, and then I have a third that's more or less an adopted that's been with us for 4 years, calls me dad. They're all 22. He moved out here. We moved out here from the East Coast about a little over 4 years ago to Colorado Springs. And long story short, I try to teach that to my kids, and my wife. I was telling her, I was like, I want to talk to the neighbor because of a situation that happened. And she's like, don't talk. I'm like, look, I'm going to talk to him. I need to stand my ground. Being kind does not mean I let people walk over me. And when there is confrontation, you can do it in a kind manner. Now, if they don't respond kind, that is their problem. And they're the ones that are going to go and be upset, not me. I'm going to continue my day knowing that I did it kindly. I asked for something that is reasonable, and I did it in a manner that was respectful and ultimately kind, And so I 100% love the fact that you've brought that up as much as you have, because to me, it's vital. And I'll also throw this extension out there, or invitation, excuse me. because this is not about, we don't pick and choose. I really just love interviewing anybody, and you have such a unique situation. If your wife would be so willing, I would love to have do an interview, and we'll call this part one of Ross Legal, and that part two, or we'll call her part one and release her first if you want, whatever, however you like to do it. But I just want to let you know that invitation is absolutely there. I would love to interview her. I think that would be
Well,
really
that's
cool.
very kind of you. And after this is over, I'll let her know that. And thank you very much. Look, I spent almost a decade as a litigator, so if we have to mix it up, we can mix it up. But I'd much rather, take the kind approach. And so that's where I start.
You win more battles when you're kind. And I just had this conversation with my owner. I was like, there's even times when you can be bad cop, good cop, because the whole concept of that is literally being mean and then being kind, right? That's the whole concept of good cop, bad cop. I'm sure you know that saying. And I'm like, listen, there's times where, if I'm dealing with someone who has hurt me, I might play a little good cop, bad cop, in the sense that I'll show that I'm angry. I'm still not going to call them a name. I'm not going to curse. It's not what I used to be. And I've also learned that it gets you much further even when you're at your most heated, you still show them, hey, I am not upset at you. I'm upset at this, or whatever the case is, and try to remain as calm and kind as you can. What's your, I'll ask this in a double phase because I'm running out of minutes here. I meant to be done already. But favorite podcast and favorite conference?
Favorite podcast, again, I'm very eclectic with my podcasts. Sometimes I listen to things that touch on my industries, but often I just like to enjoy myself. So there's a podcast called Land of the Giants, and they're in season 3 right now. I think season 1 was about, Amazon or Google, and season 2 was Amazon or Google. Year 1 was one of those, year 2 was the second one. And I think year 3, I think it's about Facebook and Meta and Instagram. I haven't tuned in on season 3 yet, but very informative. I also like listening to Adam Carolla's podcast. I like listening to Bill Maher's Club Random. It's a new podcast. It's a lot of fun where he interviews people. There's one called Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson about all things science and astronomy. So again, very eclectic, right? And then Alan Alda, the actor from MASH.
I'm very familiar. I'm 50, bro. Trust me. I watched MASH.
Well, for the benefit of everyone listening, Alan Alda is also a benefactor of this institute on the East Coast about communication and helping science practitioners communicate more effectively what they're doing. And he has a podcast called Clear and Vivid. And he interviews all kinds of people from all walks of life. I would check it out.
I was about to ask, is it interview based or is it just him? And you answer before I got the opportunity. So he brings, I would imagine interview based on what you said it was. He's probably trying to introduce these people more into the world, which, let's face it, a lot of techies are many times, it's almost like, a lot of these things we're talking about actually get a bad name. It's one of the things that Trisha said yesterday. Attorneys in general get a bad name. Salesmen, I told her, like, salesmen have always gotten a bad name. Nowadays, tech giants and tech people have a bad name because they're so eccentric and different, and it's really, back to what I said earlier, it really boils down to we're all different and we're all strange. If you just get to know us, you'll find that many times those oddities and strange things, here we go, cuckoo, perfect timing, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I know that 99% of the lawyers out there ruin it for the rest of us, but there are some folks out there trying to do the right thing.
There's more. I actually know this. As I said, I've been doing it now for 15 years, right? There are more good attorneys, I can say by the numbers. I have worked with every attorney. That is no BS. I have worked, and when I say that, I mean I've hired almost every type of attorney out there, including personal injury twice. So have gone through some situations where, I needed every kind of attorney, even the one that gets the worst claim in the world as the ambulance chaser, right? So these people are not what those horrible stereotypes usually are. I'm not saying that some people don't exist. Stereotypes are for a reason, but there's bad and all good. I think ultimately the problem is just like salesmen and just like these eccentrics, because I've met a lot of tech folks in my time and what I do outside of this, and they're all nice people. They're always good people. I don't think I've met any of them that are just absolutely what I would call evil people, right? But there's a lot of people that probably would, because they never got to know them and all they see is what's on the outside, or, that's kind of back to that judging a book by its cover theory. And I think all of that goes back to, if you're truly being kind, then you're not judging anybody and you're giving anybody the benefit of the doubt right out of the gate.
Yeah, look, Mike, I make lawyer jokes like, because it's fun.
Oh,
but,
yeah, no,
but honestly, my colleagues for the most part are very professional and ethical minded and well-rounded people. And I've enjoyed, my career and working with these folks.
You sound like you have had an exceptionally very, not just one of these. And when I say one of these, I don't mean necessarily down moments, but here, then there, then here, then there, right? Different things that kind of all led you to where you are. And it sounds like it's been a really fun journey, and you've met quite a lot of good people, been involved in some things. Like I said, man, I'm really do mean it. I know you don't know me from a hole in the wall, but I've got a lot of respect for you and give you a lot of kudos because you've been a part of internet history and where the internet is now. You literally have been a part of it.
That's very kind. And likewise, you're putting your stamp on the internet right now with 15 minutes. So I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. And believe it or not, I do other things. I'm hoping that by the time I leave this world that I will put quite a big stamp on the whole reality is try to be nice all the time. You're going to be mean. You're going to be angry. We're natural human beings, right? We're going to have our moments where all of us have a bad moment. But if you're always trying to be positive, then you will outweigh that negativity, which is going to be balanced on its own. It's going to happen, Yeah. What's your favorite, since we're talking tech, and here's our final question, but software tool, if it's just one, that's cool. But if you have maybe one piece of software and one that's not software and a tool, or if you have a couple you want to share, but what would you say is most invaluable to you in your journey these days?
Gosh, as a small law firm, I use MyCase, which is a web-based, billing and time management platform. Mm-hmm. That's a daily part of my life, and it's indispensable. For research, I go with Westlaw and Practical Law is their product. It's great for in-house folks who need to get their arms around, a topic really quickly. And then obviously all the stuff that people use, like, Microsoft Office and right. Safari and my iPhone, my laptop, my wireless phone headset that I use it in my office is a godsend. And a ballpoint pen is maybe my other favorite tool.
I love my space pen, bro. This thing is because of the smallness and the inexpensiveness of them, because they only charge like $15 for these things, and you get like 5 refill. They last a lifetime. And I'm a guy that I will literally write in the bed. I'll write on my side. So obviously there's that old adage, that they write upside down, but they really do. They're pressurized. That's all there is to it. But yeah,
cool.
When I say that we're similar, man, only one of these books is someone else's writing. The rest of them are mine. And I've got a whole nother shelf over there. I have more blank books that I've written, and on my shelves, unfortunately, I sometimes feel like that guy that they're chasing in 7. I'm going to get a knock on the door. Sir, we think you might be a little. So, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I went over a little bit by 4 minutes. I apologize. I do mean it when I say I would love to have your wife on. It's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you, Brian Ross of Ross Legal. Hopefully she'll do it. We can actually have a 2-parter, and that would be really cool. And I would actually, just so you know, if she's willing, I would kind of maybe hold this one off depending on where we are in our launch measures. And that way I can literally, have you on one interview and then the next week have your wife, or vice versa, whichever, I would honestly let you folks decide, but obviously it would kind of make more sense to do this one since we talk about your wife.
That would be a blast. I'll talk to her for sure.
Awesome.
And thank you, Michael. It's really been a pleasure.
No, man, it's been awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. And as I tell everybody too, that quite frankly, I try to say this to everybody. If I don't, that just means I probably didn't have the best experience. But when I have a good experience, and most of the time when that actually comes to volition, it's a great connection. I would love to reach out maybe in a year and have a follow-up and see how things are going for Ross Legal. And maybe at that time, what would really be fun, and it would be very easy to do, is have both of you on. And that way we can, the first one was you, second one was your wife. A year later, let's see how the firm is doing and have both of you.
That sounds like fun. And maybe by next year, it'll be called 16 minutes because you're on a growth path yourself.
There you go. We might just go up to 30.
Yep. All right. That'll be wonderful.
Have a wonderful morning. I know it's still morning there for me as well. Have a wonderful morning, and have a wonderful week. There's still some left, and have a great weekend, and stay lifted.
Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.